Our next speaker is Schreiber with a talk of organic control of SWD in berries.
So spotted-winged Drosophila is a problem for all soft fruit, blackberry, blueberry, strawberry, blackberry, cherries, apricot, nectarines. But of all of those, the biggest, most vulnerable sector is organic blueberries. By the end of, that says 2016, but by the end of 2016, we're going to have, we could say at the end of 2017 as well, we have more than 2,500 acres of organic blueberries. It's worth more than $50 million. I estimate that we may have 30 million pounds of organic blueberries. It says as much. That's actually more than the rest of the country combined. And at least 24% of our production is certified organic, and it's increasing rapidly. California, Oregon, probably together, produces another 25 million pounds. And California, Washington, Oregon represents more than 95% of organic blueberry production. And historically, we've just been using Entrust. The Entrust label now requires growers to alternate, but what are you gonna rotate to if you don't have anything that's effective? And this addressing this issue has been a top priority for the Washington Blueberry Commission. I just showed you. This is a list of the priorities. The lower the number, the higher the priority it is. And this organic control of spotted-winged Drosophila in blueberries was the second most highly ranked proposal for our industry. This is some language from the Entrust label. It says, do not make more than 2 consecutive applications of group 5 Spananeram delegate, which you can't use in organic systems, or spinosad. And it says if you need more than 2 applications, you have to rotate to another class. So you actually are breaking the law if you don't rotate when you use Entrust. You're by law required to use something else. And what I think is kind of interesting is, I don't know if they're being snarky about it, but it says rotate to another class of effective insecticides. And the question is, what would that be? One of the big concerns we have is if we got a single product that works, almost by default, you have over-reliance on that product. And I would probably say that there are people that are pushing the envelope on how much spinosad you can be using. Not that you want to be violating the label, but I'll just say there's over-reliance on Entrust. California's got a heavier SWD pressure than we do. They've been using Entrust longer than we have, and they have resistance to Entrust. In one orchard in Washington, an apple orchard, they've already developed resistance to oblique banded leaf roller in the Yakima Valley. And so we're concerned about resistance, because if we lose Entrust, that throws that entire organic blueberry market puts it at risk. Now, most organic blueberries in Washington are Duke. They're early, and you can get the fruit off in most years before spotted-winged Drosophila develops into a problem. I've tried to do spotted-winged Drosophila research on Duke and have been some years unable to find a single infested fruit with no applications. But the Duke market is really saturated, or so I thought, but there are people still planting Duke. But most plantings now are going to Draper and later varieties. And so our industry is actually planting itself into a bigger problem because the later varieties are more at risk from spotted-winged Drosophila. The old Entrust label did not protect these later varieties. The new Entrust label requires you cannot rely just on Entrust. Now you're required to rotate, and I've heard anecdotes. We have no proof that there's resistance in Washington, but we have heard that folks aren't having as good a luck with Entrust as they have in the past. I hope this is not resistance, but we're very concerned about resistance. So we're doing some work. My research program is based in Eastern Washington. I actually do this work on blackberries because I can get all of the spotted-winged Drosophila I want and more on blackberries. So this is a picture of my research site. This is equipment that we're using. This is an over-the-rower research sprayer. We can mix up 6 different applications, 6 different treatments and spray. This is what it looks like when we're spraying. This is an example of some work I did in 2015. These are different kinds of treatments of Entrust. This is Entrust with corn syrup or sugar, and it shows that, just some research we did, that if you add sugar, it increases the efficacy of these products. It does it it's a feeding stimulant, and so it doesn't actually make the product more toxic. What it does, it makes the flies consume more product. So some work that we did in 2016 at this location, I don't know how that reads for all of you, but I'm close to the screen here. We had 25 different treatments here, different rates, formulations. We had 5 to 6 applications for most of these. Sometimes we did a straight program like just Entrust or just a Grandivo. Sometimes we did Entrust rotated with Grandivo. Some of these products had corn syrup or sugar with them. And this is the treatments ranked from best to lowest. Here's the untreated check. And so the lower the number, the better it is. And we came up with Entrust rotated with Grandivo with corn syrup. Entrust plus Veritran plus corn syrup were the most effective treatments. And we actually came up with programs for organic control of spotted-winged Drosophila that were as effective as Delegate, which would be a synthetic, a conventional product. And the 2 best products had Entrust rotated with Grandivo and Veritran with corn syrup. And so that's a really important point. I want to point out Veritran here is not registered. We're looking for some new products, some new rotational products. And so anyway, we came up with these as a program. I also want to point out that there's a product down here, Jet Ag, that has some activity against spotted-winged Drosophila. This is what the research looks like, and this shows you Entrust rotated Grandivo and Veritran were very effective at controlling spotted-winged Drosophila. So that's 2016. In 2017, we did some work that was essentially, it's the same site, the same equipment, the same system. We just changed some treatments around to see if we couldn't come up with some new results. Okay, the results are kind of messy and they don't quite line up with what they did with last year. I'll just point out that one of the poorest treatment was Entrust plus Grandivo, which was the best treatment last year. I will tell you, it doesn't have corn syrup in it is the difference. But if you look at things that work, some things that worked, I want to point out this product Veritran was the most effective treatment. And Veritran should be a product that is unfamiliar to most of you. It is currently registered on mango, avocado, and citrus, and it's only available in like California, Arizona, and in Florida. So that's something that we have found. It's organically certified. It is actually sabadilla. Uh, um, it's an alkaloid. It's functionally kind of like a nicotine type product. It's a plant extract from the sabadilla tree. Grandivo has activity. The other thing I want to point out here is Venerate. Grandivo and Venerate are both products from Marone, and we got increased activity when we put new film on it. And so you see some of the best treatments: new film, new film, new film. We had new film. Here's Venerate with sugar. Here's Venerate with sugar. Here's Venerate sugar, new film, and Venerate plus new film. I also want to point out Jet Ag. That's PAA, peroxyacetic acid. It is, I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying it's functionally equivalent to oxidate. You could put oxidate in here, and I think you would get similar results. This was after. I think this is after 5 applications. If you looked at this at the end of the season, where you put the results of all the treatments together, Veritran, Grandivo, and these products with new Venerate with new film, and then Entrust Rotate with Grandivo plus Venerate and Jet Ag, and then here's Entrust plus Venerate with sugar. That S stands for sugar. Were the most effective treatments. So things that we learned was this Veritran looks very promising. It's not rich on berries. My hope is to go for a Section 18 and get this product. Now, the EPA has never granted a Section 18 for a organic product. But we're going to try and make that case. This is going to be a difficult one. Veritran, even though it's organic, requires residue data to be developed, and so to get it registered, the company Valent is in a process of trying to register it on blueberries, but it's years away. Now, if we can get a Section 18, we can have it for next year. Grandivo, again, shows significant activity against spotted-winged Drosophila. In 2017, before we had used a sugar concentration at 12.5%, we dropped it to 1%, and we found that a 1% sugar solution did not have the same level of efficacy as 12.5%. Jet Ag has activity. It's not a standalone product, but it works well as a tank mix. Tomorrow, I'm going to be giving a talk about spotted-winged Drosophila control in raspberries, and you'll see some data with Jet Ag mixed with some other products that shows some very promising results. New film improved the activity of Venerate. However, I forgot to point out, showing the data, new film seemed to interfere with the activity of Grandivo. And so some folks have brought up to me, point out, Alan, you've been doing this research for 5 years. How long are we going to fund you? The kind of the answer to that is this is a building process. This is a complicated, difficult job. Every year we generate some data and we refine and get a little bit better program. So here is how we're going to use this information. First of all, when you see the orange, that's some things that we have changed as a result of this year's result. First of all, you have to start early. You cannot wait till you find SWD to start spraying. This is true whether it's organic or conventional. It's very hard to clean up spotted-winged Drosophila once it's infested. So you have to start early. You have to use high rates. Entrust is a key. Rotate with Grandivo. We are adding Venerate to our recommendation, so that's a new change. If you're using Venerate, we're recommending using New Film P. Mix in Grandivo with sugar at more than 1%. You actually, Grandivo and Venerate at more than 1%. Corn syrup with Entrust may help, including Jet Ag in the mix should help. It's not an overly expensive product, and so I would put Jet Ag in with abandon. So in conclusion, you want to rotate your products, higher rates, tank mix like Jet Ag and Grandiva or Jet Ag and Venerate. Start early and spray at short intervals. And if you follow these recommendations, you should be able to get commercially acceptable control of spotted wing Drosophila in early, mid, and late season blueberries. And we're going to try to get access to Veritran as soon as possible. That's my talk. And I know I've got time for questions. Daryl, you never met a microphone you didn't like.
Oh, is that on? There we go. The question is, like, I guess I'm jumping off the block here. Is it like all the early variety blueberries and early variety raspberries? A lot of times we kind of get in ahead of before the SWD or the doofus fly enters in, and so really kind of that planting earlier varieties would be an advantage to a lot of people.
Yes. However, if you're a fresh pack like most organic growers are, that market's pretty saturated. Now, if you're a process grower, planting early is a real strategy, for avoiding spotted wing Drosophila. Yes. Wait, hang on. I can't hear you.
With Venerate, how is it that a product that's exempt from tolerance need to have a tolerance?
Okay, let's back up here. You said Venerate. I said Veritran. Okay, so Venerate is exempt from tolerance, so you don't have to have residue data for Veritran. I just did it. Venerate is exempt from tolerance, so you don't need residue data. Veritran is not exempt from tolerance, so you have to have residue data. It is still organic. Now, so here's why that is. A lot of people like to think because it's organic does not mean it has no mammalian or environmental risks associated with it. That is a fallacy. There are some organic products that have either a human health and or some kind of environmental risk associated with it. Veritran is one of those products. Now, I don't think it's probably particularly dangerous compared to some other products, but it has some risk issues associated with it. And as a result, it has to have some residue data because there's some concern over some human health. So they want to make sure the residues are at an appropriate level. To be organic, it has to be naturally derived, and it is naturally derived, and it can be manufactured without using synthetic products. So it can be organic, but it still requires residue data. Entrust requires residue data, and it's also similarly organically certified.
Alan,
Yes.
I have two questions. One is that corn syrup that you use, does that have to be certified organic?
All right. I don't like this question. I get this question every year. I say the same thing every year, and one of these days I will be wrong. Now, we have been told by Department of Agriculture that that sugar does not have to be certified organic. We've been told that. I have a feeling one of these days they will figure out another way to make life less simple for us and tell us it has to be, and that would not be fun.
Gotcha. Second question, you left out pyrethrum. Any reason for that?
Yes.
Pyganic. I know it's probably not as effective, but it's another alternative. So.
The first year we had this meeting, we had Mark Bolda from University of California come up, super sharp guy, and he said people talked about pyrethrum resistance in spotted wing Drosophila, but he said we don't have resistance to pyrethrin in spotted wing Drosophila, which is pyganic, because it never worked to start with. And we have done research and tested it in the previous years and found that pyganic has virtually no activity against spotted wing Drosophila. And the reason for that is it just doesn't have a long enough period of residual control. Similarly, we have not been able to have much luck with azadirachtin either. So to me, if you see some of the research I do on organic and insects, pyganic and azadirachtin are common products, particularly tank mix. But in spotted-wing Drosophila, we just have had no luck. Chris.
Okay, so why didn't you use corn syrup with the Entrust Grandivo mix last year?
Wait, say it again.
Corn syrup with the Entrust Grandivo mix last year.
Here is Entrust Grandivo with corn syrup. That was the most effective product. So was your question, why didn't we use it? That was our most effective treatment. Yeah. And when you looked at Entrust with Grandivo, it was down here. But when you put corn syrup, it was even better.
Okay, we'll go to the next question then. What about climate change having influence on SWD life cycle? Potentially earlier emergence.
Okay, so I believe in climate change. I think only an idiot wouldn't. But I also think that when you think of climate change, in the next 10 years or 20 years, we're talking about a fraction of a degree. And so I don't think that we are sophisticated enough to measure that impact on something like spotted-wing Drosophila. There's so much variation in our climate environment. The year-to-year, day-to-day, month-to-month variation is a much bigger deal than climate change. The impact of climate change, in my opinion, is something that's going to build up over time. So I don't lie awake at night thinking about climate change. I'm not concerned about it, and I'm not smart enough and sophisticated enough to figure out what the impacts will be. I can't even offer an opinion.
Okay. I'll keep going then. Will Jet Ag reduce the efficacy of Venerate or Grandivo?
Great question. So in my studies, Jet Ag has always seemed to either improve efficacy or not change efficacy when tank mixed. I've never seen antagonism where Jet Ag would reduce the effectiveness. And if you talk to the company, they say that it doesn't antagonize or reduce efficacy. My data suggests when you mix Jet Ag with other products, it doesn't hurt. In a lot of cases, it helps. And like I said, I'm going to give a talk tomorrow where you're going to see a number of treatments that have Jet Ag mixed with some other products. And I'm not trying to promote Jet Ag over Oxidate. I really don't know that there's any difference between the two of them. It's just Jet Ag did some research with me a couple years ago, and I got familiar with the product, and I just happened to use that product as an example of a PAA type.
Alan.
Hang on. I'm going to ask Julie.
What about Jet Ag is effective?
Okay.
What's the mode of action?
Okay, that's a great question. It's registered as a pesticide, but it actually has no direct toxicity to the insect. In fact, it's not even there. It has no residual activity. It hits a plant, but what it does is on the fruit, see, Jet Ag and Oxidate, or let's see, I actually buy commercially the food safety formulation of Oxidate, which I'm drawing a blank on, for my food safety program. It surface sterilizes things. And so when a female fruit fly lands on a blueberry, she sponges it with the hostilate mouth parts and has to determine its adequate food source before she will oviposit on it. And so they taste things on the blueberry. They look for the molds and the yeast and things on there that tells them that it's a blueberry. So what Jet Ag does is it surface sterilizes the blueberries, removes it kills the microbes or the yeast or fungi, and so they don't recognize it as a food source, and so it reduces the oviposition. It doesn't kill anything as it relates to spotted wing Drosophila. So another good thing about that is that's a great resistance management tool. Chris.
How many pounds of sugar in a 400-gallon tank do you recommend?
God, I can't do math in front of everybody. I can't.
There's a flip chart over there on the right if you want to.
I can't do math in front of everybody. I will tell you that, let's see, I can't tell you. Okay, what's 400 times 8.6 times 1% is, and it's more than 400 times 8.6 times 0.01. It's more than that, and it's less than 400 times 8.6 times 0.125. It's somewhere in between those two numbers, and we have not done the research to figure out what the right amount should be. I know what's 12.5 is probably overkill. In our research, 1% what did not appear to be enough. I only have 1 year's data on that. Betsy Beers, who is smarter than me on these matters, is working on this with cherries, and I think she found that 1% worked for her. How am I doing for time?
Got one question for you.
Okay, Daryl.
Okay. Out of curiosity, and whether it's organic or not organic, I realize that the doofus fly overwinters. And so is there sprays that can be put on in the fall that would kind of control some of their overwintering in the trees?
I would put that in as recreational spraying and would probably be of minimal benefit. Probably most of the flies that are coming into your field, that are in your field, are coming from outside of your field. All right. Question? Okay, what do you got?
What's the difference between using corn syrup and sugar?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that question. Last year, when I made my slides, I put CS, corn syrup. This year, I put sugar. I'm using the same thing. I'm still using corn syrup. Corn syrup's sugar. So when you think of sugar, you're thinking of C12H22O11. You're thinking of cane sugar. Corn syrup is basically a mixture of fructose and sucrose. So I've always, in all my work, I've always done corn syrup, and we use K-Row light corn syrup because it's cheap and easy for me to get. Some other folks looked at some work that I was doing and did some research looking at different kinds of sugars and found that the kind of sugar did not matter. So what you want to do is basically find a cheap source of sugar. If I had more money, or people gave me more money to do research, I'd love to do a sugar rate study and look at different kinds of sugar as well. It's just I have a limited amount of money to do work on, and I just can't answer all the questions. Yes.
Yeah, any concern of the Jet Ag or oxidate products having a tank reaction or stripping any residual fungicides or insecticides from the plant itself?
My gut feeling is that shouldn't be an issue, but I haven't done the research. I can tell you the folks that are peddling those products say that's not an issue. I've not seen any data on that. But Tom Walters, what happens if you put Jet Ag in the wrong bottle?
If you put Jet Ag in the wrong bottle, it'll form gas. We've tried putting it in a glass bottle because we thought glass was inert. That was a great big mistake because the glass bottle blew up in the back of a pickup truck.
Yeah, so you got to keep these things in original containers. I wasn't thinking, and I shipped him I poured Jet Ag out of the right bottle and put it in the wrong bottle, which I didn't realize at the time, and shipped it to Tom and gave him a little bomb. So one thing I'll tell you about Jet Ag is keep it in, you got to have something that will allow it to off gas. So keep it in the right bottle. All right. I am done.
Thank you. We are going to